when the door opens. Anyway, the second night began before the first had finished. That's the best way I can describe it. I didn't leave Outpost 12. Outpost 12 didn't let me. When the wrong clock reset to 2 a.m., my body reacted before my mind caught up. Muscles tensed, breath shortened. A familiar dread settled in, like returning to a nightmare you'd already learned the layout of. The new Collins, if that's what he was, never came inside. I watched him on the exterior camera for nearly 10 minutes. He stood at the gate, clipboard tucked under his arm, smiling at nothing. Not at the building, not at the camera, at the fog. Then, without looking back, he turned and walked down the road until the gray swallowed him. The gate never opened. The station logged his arrival anyway. A line appeared in the system log without my input. 0158, supervisor on site, continuity confirmed. I stared at it, fingers hovering uselessly over the keyboard. Continuity of what? I whispered. The station didn't answer. The sea that won't sit still. At 2:11 a.m., I noticed the sea had changed. I don't mean the waves. I don't mean the weather. I mean the way it reflected light. On the exterior camera facing the coast, the water should have been a broken mirror, moonlight fractured by motion. Instead, it looked smooth, too smooth, as if the sea had been replaced by a single dark surface that only pretended to move. I zoomed in, the image pixelated then stabilized, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw shapes beneath the surface, not swimming, waiting. I slammed the zoom back out and rubbed my eyes. Get it together, I muttered. The radio crackled. Not 178.6, a maritime emergency channel. A calm voice spoke, professional and clipped. Mayday, mayday, this is the Ellen Price. We're experiencing displacement. I straightened. Training kicked in automatically. Ellen Price, this is Outpost 12. State your position. There was a pause. Then the voice replied, slower now. That's the problem. We did. And the sea disagreed. My blood ran cold. What do you mean by displacement? I asked. Static fluttered, then cleared. We can see the coast. We can see the hill. But the light on the mast is wrong. It's ahead of us. I checked the camera again. The mast beacon glowed steadily, but something was off. The light seemed to stretch, leaving a faint trail behind it, like a long exposure photo that hadn't finished resolving. Ellen Price, I said carefully. How long have you been at sea? Another pause. This one stretched. That depends, the voice said. Are you asking us now, or before you remembered us? The channel filled with low-frequency interference that made my teeth ache. I reached for the logbook. Xiaotutu 14. Vessel Ellen Price reports displacement. Claims mast light ahead of position. Crew speech indicates temporal confusion. As I wrote, the voice returned, closer. Aaron, do you hear that? Hear what? The water, it said. It's knocking. I listened. Beyond the walls of the station, beneath the hum of machinery, I heard it. A rhythmic sound from the direction of the sea. Not waves, a dull, hollow impact. Like something large, pressing gently, repeatedly, against a barrier it expected to open. 178.6. Without a transmission, the frequency indicator flickered. 178.6 lit up. No sound came through. No voice. Just a low, sub-audible vibration that resonated in my chest. The laminated rules slid on the desk, nudged by nothing. Rule 5, one I hadn't noticed before, was now visible. If 178.6 activates without audio, do not move toward the coast-facing wall. I froze. Slowly, too slowly, I realized my chair had rolled a few inches toward the windowless sea-facing wall. I hadn't felt it move. I locked the wheels with my foot. The vibration intensified. On the exterior camera, the sea surface rippled inward, forming a shallow depression directly offshore, as if something massive beneath it was drawing closer to the surface. Without rising, the radio crackled again. The Ellen Price was screaming now. Multiple voices, overlapping, panicked. It's not water. It's turn the lights off. Why is the light inside us? The feed cut abruptly. Silence returned. I stared at the dead channel, heart pounding. The vibration from 178.6 eased, then faded. The sea camera returned to normal. I exhaled shakily and wiped sweat from my brow. That wasn't real, I said aloud. It can't be. The station chimed softly. A new log entry appeared on screen. Aero 222. Vessel successfully aligned. Coastal distortion resolved. Aligned. The word echoed like a verdict. I slammed the logbook shut. Aligned with what? I demanded. The answer came not from the radio, but from the unlabeled door at the end of the corridor. A soft mechanical click, not unlocking. Preparing. I stood slowly. No, I said, not tonight. The door didn't move. Instead, the hallway lights dimmed, one by one, like a runway guiding something inward. The station wasn't asking anymore. It was scheduling what comes through when it isn't whole. I didn't approach the door. That's important. I need you to understand that what happened next did not require me to make a mistake. The station made it for me. The partial opening. The unlabeled door did not open the way doors normally do. There was no hinge movement, no swing, no gap you could measure. Instead, the seam around its edge brightened. Just a hairline glow, thin as a thought you try not to finish. The light wasn't white. It wasn't any color I could name. It looked like the absence of shadow, like something correcting the darkness. The control room monitors flickered. Every camera, hallway, exterior, generator room, showed the same thing. The door, from angles that didn't exist. I backed away until my shoulders hit the equipment rack. No, I said again, quieter now. You said the door stays closed. The radio answered, not on 178.6, but through the station intercom, the one that should only broadcast my voice. It does, it replied calmly. Most of the time, the glow pulsed, and something pressed against it from the other side. Not a shape, a distortion, like heat over asphalt, except colder. So cold my breath fogged in the control room. The pressure in my chest returned, stronger this time, synchronized with the pulse. Thump, thump, thump. The wrong clock ticked faster. Why? Cameras don't work. The monitors spasmed. Pixels stretched, smeared, corrected themselves, then failed again. One frame stuck long enough for me to register something impossible. The door was open, wide, and the hallway beyond it wasn't a hallway. It was the sea, not the coast outside. The same smooth, dark surface I'd seen earlier, but vertical, rising like a wall. Where the corridor should have been, something moved beneath it, a ripple that pushed forward, bulging toward the threshold. The frame froze, then the monitor went black. Every screen followed. The control room was plunged into emergency lighting. Red, low, pulsing. I realized then why Collins had said it wasn't a studio. Studio's record. This place hosts the thing that isn't finished. A sound came from the door, not a knock, A drag, wet but not liquid, like something incomplete pulling itself along a surface it didn't understand. The seam widened, just enough. A hand came through. I don't know how else to describe it, but calling it a hand feels dishonest. It had the right number of fingers. That's where the similarity ended. Each finger bent at slightly different angles, as if assembled from memory rather than anatomy. The skin, or whatever passed for it, shifted constantly, like it couldn't decide which texture to be. As it touched the floor, the pressure in my chest spiked. I gagged, fighting the urge to retch. The hand didn't reach toward me. It reached toward the wall, toward the station itself. Its fingers pressed against the concrete, and the concrete responded. The lights dimmed further. The hum of the equipment deepened. The station leaned, not physically, conceptually, like it was remembering something it had forgotten. The voice without a mouth. When the voice spoke, it didn't come from the hand. It came from the building. "This is wrong," it said, almost apologetic. "You're early." I slid down the rack and sat on the floor, unable to stand. "You said you wanted me to open it," I whispered. "Not like this. This is only a fragment, a misalignment." The hand twitched. Its fingers flexed, leaving faint impressions in the concrete that faded after a second, like breath on glass. "We don't fit yet," the voice continued. "You're still remembering." The door shuddered. The seam narrowed, squeezing the hand. For a moment, I thought it would be severed. Instead, it retracted, not pulled back. Unmade, the fingers blurred, overlapping themselves, then folded inward like reflections collapsing. The seam sealed. The glow vanished. Silence slammed back into the station so hard it made my ears ring. Aftermath. The emergency lights snapped off. Normal lighting returned. The monitors rebooted. The hallway camera showed the unlabeled door, closed and inert. No glow, no damage, as if nothing had happened, except on the floor where the hand had touched. A wet mark. Not water, not blood. Something clear and viscous that slowly evaporated upward instead of spreading. I didn't touch it. I didn't move. The radio crackled softly. 178.6 was dark. A new system log entry appeared, unprompted. ZO2, 47. Partial event terminated. Fragment failed to anchor. Memory load insufficient. I stared at the words. "Memory load," I whispered. The intercom chimed. "That was closer than Collins ever got," the voice said. "You're doing well." "I don't want to do well," I said. "I want this to stop." There was a pause, longer than usual. Then, stopping is not one of the available states. The wrong clock slowed again, settling back into its steady, hateful rhythm. Outside, on the sea-facing camera, the water rippled once. And then something impossible happened. A reflection appeared, not of the mast, not of the sky, of the station. But the reflection showed the door open. The memories that aren't yours. I stayed seated on the floor longer than I needed to, partly because my legs wouldn't respond, mostly because I was afraid that if I stood up I would do it the wrong way, as if there were suddenly rules for how a body should move, and mine had not been updated yet. The wet mark on the floor finished evaporating, not drying, leaving. When it was gone, the concrete looked untouched. No stain, no residue. The station had already decided it hadn't happened. The first slip, the change was subtle. That's what makes it dangerous. I returned to the desk and opened the logbook to write, but my hand paused above the page. The pen felt unfamiliar. Wrong weight, wrong balance. For a moment, I couldn't remember learning to write. The knowledge was there, The memory of learning it wasn't. I shook my head and forced myself to focus. 0249, partial door event observed. Non-physical fragment made contact with interior structure. No response initiated. As soon as the pen left the page, a second line appeared beneath it. Different handwriting. My handwriting, but older, more confident. You always call it partial the first few times. My breath caught. I hadn't written that. I flipped back through the logbook. Entries were changing. Not all of them. Just the margins. Notes I didn't remember making. Small corrections. Crossed out words replaced with cleaner ones. As if someone were editing my fear into something more precise. The voice that borrows. The radio crackled softly. Not a channel. Not Wonder 78.6. Just presence. You feel it now, the voice said. That's good. My mouth opened, and words came out before I chose them. I didn't agree to this. The voice paused. You did, it replied gently. Just not this time. My throat went dry. What do you mean this time? The control room lights dimmed by a fraction. Not enough to trigger emergency mode. Just enough to make shadows deepen. You think memory is personal, the voice continued. But memory is structural. It's how places keep their shape. I felt something press against the inside of my skull. Not pain, not pressure. Alignment. Images flickered behind my eyes. A different night. A different storm. The station newer. The door opened wider. Me. Older than I am now. Younger than the photos. Standing in front of it with Collins beside me. Collins looked terrified. I looked calm. What you remember when you stop fighting? I grabbed the edge of the desk, grounding myself. That's not me, I whispered. The voice didn't argue. It is, it said. Just not now. The images intensified. I smelled salt, cold metal, old coffee. I remembered rules being written, not printed, carved. I remembered learning which thoughts to let finish and which ones to stop halfway. I remembered standing at the unlabeled door and understanding something fundamental. The door does not let things through. It lets states through, and states need anchors. Human anchors work best. I gagged and leaned forward, bile rising in my throat. No, I said, I wouldn't do that. You didn't, the voice corrected. You will. The wrong clock ticked louder. The sound change. I noticed my voice sounded different. Not to me, to the station. Every time I spoke, the radio meters twitched, as if I were transmitting without touching the console. I cleared my throat and tried again. Stop accessing me. The meters jumped higher. The voice sounded pleased. You're synchronizing. That took Collins years. Something in the hallway clicked. Not the door, the lights. They brightened slightly, only along the corridor leading to the unlabeled door. A path. The station wasn't forcing me. It was inviting me. The memory that broke me. The final image hit without warning. I was on the sea-facing side of the station, somehow outside. Even though I knew I never went out during an event, the sea was smooth. The mast light reflected in it, wrongly, duplicated again and again, stretching into the distance. And standing at the shoreline was me, but not anchored. My reflection didn't mirror my movements. It lagged, then it smiled before I did. The reflection raised its hand, and the water parted around it like fabric. Behind it, something vast shifted, not surfacing, aligning. I screamed. The image shattered. What snaps you back? I slammed my head against the desk. Hard. Pain exploded through my vision, bright and grounding. The radio meters dropped. The lights steadied. The pressure receded. I gasped, sucking in air like I'd been underwater. The voice returned, but quieter now, less confident. "You shouldn't hurt the anchor," it said. "That destabilizes the hinge." "Good," I rasped. "Then stay out of my head." There was a pause, a long one. Then, "You think this is your head?" The intercom clicked off. The station fell into uneasy normalcy. The warning, "You can't unhear." At 3:19 a.m., the internal phone rang. I didn't answer it. I stared at it until it stopped. Then, from the dorm stairs, I heard a sound I hadn't heard yet. Paper. Footsteps accompanied it. Slow, deliberate. Someone was coming down with a folder. My folder. I knew without knowing how. The hallway camera flickered on. It showed me, again, descending the stairs. But this version held the manila folder from Collins's locker. His face was calm, resolved. He stopped at the bottom step and looked directly into the camera. Into me. He spoke without opening his mouth. "Next time, don't fight it this hard," he said. "It makes the fragments sloppy." I reached for the emergency power switch again. The figure on the screen smiled wider and stepped out of frame toward the control room. The last anchor. The hallway camera went dark. Not cut, not disabled. It simply stopped being relevant. I felt it before I understood it. The way you feel a storm. Change direction before the wind reaches you. The footsteps were still there. Closer now. Not heavy. Not rushed. Confident. When the station chooses, I reached the emergency power switch and hesitated. The last time I'd used it, the station had allowed it. That terrified me more than if it had resisted, because it meant the station wasn't fragile. It was selective. The footsteps stopped just outside the control room. I didn't hear breathing. I didn't hear movement, but I felt a presence settle against the door, like weight distributed evenly across a surface. Then my voice spoke from the other side. "Aaron," it said calmly, "you don't have to open it." I squeezed my eyes shut. "I know," I whispered. "That's why this works," the voice replied. The door handle didn't turn. Instead, something else happened. The lights dimmed, not all at once, but in layers, like reality lowering its resolution. The wrong clock slowed, then stopped. The overlap. The control room felt smaller, not physically, conceptually, as if its boundaries were being redefined. I looked down at my hands. For a second, they didn't belong to me. Not someone else's hands, just shared. A sensation like two sets of instructions trying to use the same interface. My fingers twitched, not my command. "Stop," I said. The word echoed twice, once from my mouth, once from somewhere just behind my eyes. "We're not stopping," the voice said. And this time, it came from inside my skull. "We're stabilizing." Pain flared, not sharp, but deep and spreading. A headache that felt like pressure from all directions. Memories surfaced again. But these weren't flashes. They were layers. I remembered standing at the station decades ago, then remembering it, then remembering correcting myself. I remembered learning which version of me to keep and which ones to discard. Colin's last gift through the haze. I remembered Colin's letter. "Do it only if the alternative is worse." I laughed, a broken, hysterical sound. "What's worse than this?" I asked. The voice answered without hesitation. A hinge without an anchor. The walls creaked, not from strain, but adjustment. On the sea-facing camera, which had somehow come back on without my noticing, the water pulled inward again. Deeper this time. Wider. The reflection of the mast fractured into dozens of parallel lines. Something vast shifted beneath the surface. and it was moving faster now. The choice that isn't one. I felt myself being pulled, not toward the door, but through it. Not physically, internally, like a thought, finishing itself whether you want it to or not. Two versions of me overlapped perfectly for one impossible moment. And in that overlap, I understood. The station doesn't keep the door closed. The anchor does. Every time the anchor weakens, the door opens a little. Fragments come through, memories bleed, alignment fails, and something larger gets closer. The anchor's job isn't to open the door, it's to stand in the doorway. I screamed, not in pain, but in rage. "You're using me. We're preserving you," the voice corrected. "You're the most stable configuration we've had." The footsteps outside the door resumed. One step, then another. The door handle turned. When two become one, the door opened. Not wide, just enough. I saw myself standing there. Not a reflection, not a double, a continuation. He looked at me with something like pity. "You'll get used to it," he said gently. "The first merge is always loud." He stepped forward. The room folded for one breathless second. There was no inside or outside, only alignment. Pain vanished, fear vanished. I felt complete. The pressure in the station eased. The C on the monitor settled. The mast light stabilized. The wrong clock started again. Tick, tick, tick. After I was alone in the control room, the door was closed. The lights were steady. My hands were my own again. Mostly. The logbook lay open. A fresh entry waited, already half written in my handwriting. 0327, anchor stabilized, merge successful. Door integrity restored. My hand moved notably. But this time I let it. I finished the sentence. Outside, the sea reflected correctly. For now, the radio crackled softly. 1 to 78.6 remained dark. Satisfied. What you are now. I sat back in the chair and breathed. Slowly, evenly. I knew things I hadn't before. I knew how long the station could hold. I knew what signs meant immediate failure. I knew why Collins had looked so tired. I also knew something worse. This wasn't the end of the night. It was the end of choice. The station didn't need to threaten me anymore. I understood the stakes, and I understood why no one ever quits Outpost 12. Because leaving isn't abandonment. It's transfer. The internal phone rang once. I picked it up without thinking. A new voice spoke young, nervous. "Hi, this is Aaron. I'm calling about the night position." I closed my eyes, smiled. "Welcome," I said calmly. "You're right on time."